in Pennsylvania have never had a fair shot at getting ahead. We're all here standing on these stairs because even prior to the pandemic, there were deep-seated systemic issues acting as a barrier for communities of color. We're here because on the heels of tragedy like the coronavirus, this moment is a historic opportunity to invest. If the state got paid, where is our aid? Let me ask you to join me. If the state got paid, where is our aid? And I hope that message is very clear. The coronavirus pulled back the curtain for everyone about the realities that so many in this Commonwealth are facing. We can not ignore them any longer. I believe we had a pandemic when it comes to the coronavirus, but we also had an economic pandemic that was also highlighted by the coronavirus. Even when people are getting back to normal, communities and businesses are still in a state of emergency dealing with the aftermath. The federal government has allocated money to Pennsylvania, and it's up to our state legislators to make sure it gets in the hands of small business, working people, students, and for critical health care initiatives. They have given us $7 billion. Let me say that again, $7 billion to invest back in our communities. If the state got paid, where is our aid? Instead, legislators want to stash this $7 billion. What they don't understand, it is really raining. This is one of the most difficult times in modern history. I can't think of a better moment to do everything possible to help people in need. There is so much that needs to be addressed here in Pennsylvania, but it is imperative that we focus on these four main initiatives with the $7 billion available to our legislators in the budget. We must invest in 1, small business, workforce development, and job training. Because if individuals do not have a job, they cannot be pulled out of poverty. They cannot be. They need a career, and training and development is necessary to succeed. Next, education. I was always taught by my mother and father and my family that education opens the doors. What you do once you get in the door is on you. But education is a key to pull up and to make things happen. A good education opens up the doors for people for the rest of their lives. We have seen all the research and the data, and it shows those that are well educated have a higher probability, opportunity to succeed. It's time to ensure that our Pennsylvania children are guaranteed this. Many times, my heart is so sad when I look at what's happening in the school system and the lack of funding and resources. Violence prevention and access to mental health services. I don't have to tell any of you the importance of that, and those that are in Philadelphia, what we face and the number of homicides and shootings that have occurred. The gun violence epidemic has taken too many lives across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Our legislators have the opportunity to invest in solutions to this crisis. Lastly, we must invest in vaccine promotions and population health. Simply put, we need shots in the arm. It takes a long-term investment to do just that. This is our moment to address the inequities that have existed for decades in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. These dollars, $7 billion and another $3 billion, that's $10 billion, cannot be taken for granted. Otherwise, these gaps will widen for people of the Commonwealth. We will continue to live, work, and learn in places without the tools that we need to succeed. Again, I want to reiterate as I close, if the state got paid, where is our aid? As we rally today for what feels like basic minimum investments for the people of this Commonwealth, I want to leave you with this final point. The pandemic did not create these issues for our communities, but allowed them to rise to the surface. The issues have always been lingering, and now we've reached our breaking point. If the state got paid, where is our aid? With that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, Pennsylvania State Representative, 181st District. Malcolm.
Good morning. And first, I just want to acknowledge my colleagues, some of whom you'll hear from. Representative Deloso is here, Representative Guzman, Representative Sanchez, Representative Isaacson, Representative Nelson, Representative Hohenstein, Representative Burgos, and our chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, Chairwoman Donna Bullock. I think I got everything, right? And I want to acknowledge my colleagues in large part because they're great, but also because what Ms. Custis was just talking about, we've been going around the entire Commonwealth talking about with the Pennsylvania Rescue Plan. House Democrats have laid out a comprehensive plan on how to invest the aid that came from the American Rescue Plan. And Andrea finished her remarks, and I just wanted to pick up there. My biggest fear is that folks think we can go back to normal. Normal wasn't working. Normal was a system in which Black and brown entrepreneurs were locked out from getting the type of loans they needed to either start a business or move that enterprise from a small business to maybe a medium enterprise. That was normal before, and that wasn't working. Normal was the widening gap in terms of the healthcare disparities that made this pandemic that much worse for communities of color. That was normal. That doesn't work. Normal was Pennsylvania continuing to rank almost dead last in terms of equitable funding for our school buildings. Normal was doing nothing in terms of making the type of comprehensive investments that we need in job training, in housing, that also help us to deal with reducing crime. Things that we know actually reduce crime. Investing in people, getting a good education, having somewhere to live, being able to get an education that allows them to pursue their dreams and their passions. That was normal before. And the excuses that we heard from this building in the past was we don't have the resources. Oh, we want to do these things. Oh, we would love to do it, but we don't have the resources. Now we have the resources to get it done. Not only do we have the $7 billion from the American Rescue Plan, but we also have a $3 billion surplus. We have what it takes from a resource perspective to make these critical investments. The question for us, and it's why you see these advocates here today, is do we have what it takes in terms of the political courage to make these investments? In terms of the political will to make these investments? We know what needs to be done, and that is what's so frustrating to the average Pennsylvanian. This is not complex in terms of what we need to do. We need to make sure there are resources for businesses. That's common sense. We need to make sure all of our kids, no matter what district they live in, have the resources to compete, have teachers that are well compensated, are in buildings that aren't lined with asbestos and mold. That is common sense. We need to make sure that everybody has access to high quality healthcare. This is common sense. But I will tell you, common sense doesn't reign in this building, unfortunately. What reigns are people whose short-term political interests take precedent over what Pennsylvanians need. The legislators who are here behind me in the House Democratic Caucus, I know some folks are in meetings. We went to every single part of this Commonwealth talking about these investments. Representative Guzman's district, we were there walking around, talking about what this investment could mean in real people's lives. And I'm so excited to know that we have so many other organizations that understand this investment as well, and they're going to be here today in the Capitol demanding that we get it done. We have an opportunity to get it done. We cannot squander this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. And now it's a real pleasure to introduce Donna Bullock, Pennsylvania State 195th District and Chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. Donna.
I gotta remember to bring my heels when I'm out here. Good morning. Last week I had the opportunity to speak at a high school graduation. It was the first time I sat and watched as students took a moment to honor a classmate who lost his life to gun violence during the school year. It was a touching ceremony in which they presented his cap and gown to his brother and they celebrated his life. This is too real for many of our young people. What we know is while we came out of a pandemic with the coronavirus, many of our communities have been living with the gun violence epidemic for many years prior to last year. But surely, as the pandemic required the closure of after-school programs, recreation centers, schools, safe havens, job opportunities for our young people, we saw this gun violence epidemic skyrocket in many of our cities across the Commonwealth. That is why it is important to take this aid and invest in programs that will address gun violence prevention and gun violence intervention in our communities. Instead, my colleagues would rather focus on pushing through legislation that does very little to address the root causes of gun violence. Instead, my colleagues would rather push legislation that would not get across the governor's desk. Instead, my colleagues would rather put these funds to the side and invest in some other rainy day. But it has been raining for far too long in communities across the Commonwealth. It has been raining for far too long for those families who have lost young people. It has been raining for far too long for these schools and school communities who are dealing with the loss of their students. We must invest in these programs. Instead of doing that, they choose not to. My colleagues are not interested in investing not only in the gun violence reduction programs, but in all the root causes that we know lead to gun violence, like funding our schools. They don't want to have that conversation. My colleagues are not interested in addressing gun violence because if they did, they would invest in good paying jobs and raise the minimum wage here in the Commonwealth. If my colleagues want to address gun violence in my community, they would make sure we have opportunities for our young people, and we have affordable housing, and we have all the things that make a community successful and gives hope to our young people. That is what we need to be doing. As we deal with this recovery and the investments that we know we can use our budget as a tool to address racial inequities and to address the epidemic of gun violence. Let's do that with intent and strategically, knowing that we can really, really make a difference. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to invest in our young people, invest in the programs and in their success, and ultimately invest in the programs that we all know, in the schools that we all know will help us address the root causes of gun violence. What we all know will address poverty in the Commonwealth. We got paid, Pennsylvania. Let's make sure that Pennsylvanians, our residents, our neighbors, get the aid they deserve, the aid that their tax dollars paid for. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Donna, I do have my flats on, by the way. So let me now say I have the pleasure, because I work very closely with the next speaker, and that is Tomea Sippio-Smith from PCCY, Public Citizens for Children and Youth, K through 12 education, and she is the policy director and probably one of the noted subject matter experts in education. Tomea.
Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Tomea Sippio-Smith. I'm the Education Policy Director at Public Citizens for Children and Youth, or PCCY. This year, we have an unprecedented opportunity to invest in the education of our children. From the earliest years until graduation from high school, we have a surplus that can be used to close education gaps for students once and for all. It is absurd that Pennsylvania ranks 45th in the nation for state contribution to education funding. And we have a governor that's proposed a bold plan to use the funding formula to adequately and equitably fund our schools. This bold proposal is designed to close the gaps for good and decrease pressure on local property taxes. It provides much-needed increases to education funding, chipping away at a $4.6 billion shortfall Pennsylvania public schools continue to battle. That shortfall harms some of the state's most vulnerable students, including most of the state's Black, Latinx, and poor students. In fact, in the most underfunded districts, the most underfunded 100 districts in this Commonwealth, 65% of the Black students reside in those districts. 58% of the Latinx population resides in those districts, and 58% of the state students that are in poverty live in these districts. And this year, because of these additional federal funds, we can change outcomes for those students and others and close those gaps. We can use federal funds and funding formula to get these students access to the resources that we know that students need to succeed, like smaller classes, consistent access to technology, safe school buildings, and additional supports. And because of these unprecedented funds, we can begin helping our students even earlier. We can allocate millions of dollars to pre-K counts and allow for more seats for students across the country to get a good start. And we can help to keep the childcare industry afloat by doing all the things that would support the investment in our young children, like providing payments to childcare providers serving families receiving subsidies, and also eliminate co-pays for families receiving subsidies, and using federal funds to reimburse childcare providers for those losses. We can advertise the childcare programs, the subsidy program, focusing on targeted areas to get more families back to work. We can also fund an additional 3,000 high-quality infant toddler slots to get families back in the game. We are living in unprecedented times. We need unprecedented solutions. This year, we have no excuses as to why we can't get it done. We have the money to do it. And if Pennsylvania wants to retain a robust economy and ensure that all students are prepared to graduate ready to earn life-sustaining wages, enter and excel into the workforce, and contribute to society, we must invest in education.
Just want to recognize for a minute Representative Dorisha Parker, who joined after, I think, Kenyatta, after you recognized it. Thank you, Representative. Thank you so much. So now I have the pleasure of introducing someone that everybody knows in the Commonwealth. I'm trying to find somebody that doesn't know State Senator Vincent Hughes, who has been out there in front as a strong leader to absolutely get legislators for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to use common sense and to spend that $7 billion, and to also understand we have an extra $3 billion. I will probably never live to see this much money in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Senator Hughes, thank you.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you to all my colleagues. Thank you, Madam Chair, Donna Bullock of the Pennsylvania Legislature Black Caucus. We're going to keep this real simple, and we're going to keep this real honest. We will not be partisan. We will be factual. We will not be okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We will not be partisan. We will be factual, though. All of my colleagues, all the speakers, everyone has spoken about the need, the issues, what can get addressed. Understand that all the issues that have been talked about exist in every county of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Not just in a few, they exist in every county. Every county. Whether it's child care issues or toxic schools or job training, job creation, our unemployment rate still is alarmingly too high here in Pennsylvania. We need to be in the business of utilizing state resources to drive economic development and job creation, and equally as important, and maybe more so, drive job training and job preparation, so we can prepare communities for the jobs that are being created and that need to be created. But the real deal is this, and this is what I want everyone to lock in on. We are not suffering from a lack of money. Gotta hammer that point home, folks. Gotta hammer that point home. We are not suffering from a lack of money. To some of my colleagues who've been up here a few years, to the ones who just got here, Darisha. All right? All right? Yes, applaud Darisha, all right? We have never had these kinds of resources. Never had these kinds of resources. I don't care what governor we're talking about. I don't care if it was in the context of the tax increase in 1991 under Governor Casey. I don't care if it was in the context of the tax increase in 2003 under Governor Rendell. We have never had these kinds of resources. And there's been no tax increase. And there is no call for a tax increase right now. And because of the way things are going, thank you, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, there won't be a call for a tax increase for a long time. Applaud that. Yes, sir, brother. What there is, though, just on a factual basis, is a majority party in the House and a majority party in the Senate. They're in a majority of the Republican caucuses who are refusing to entertain common sense ideas that touch every community and every county in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Why do I know this? The House Democratic Caucus put out a proposal, the Pennsylvania Rescue Plan, am I right? The Senate Democratic Caucus put out a proposal called the New Deal for PA. The Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus put out a proposal. They didn't give it a name, they just gave it a whole long list at once, okay? Which is cool, all right? That's right, just get it done. But the point of the matter is that the only folks who have not laid out an idea are the people in the majority. They have not laid out a proposal. They have not talked about job creation. They have not talked about child care. They have not talked about education funding. They have not talked about investing in our environment. They have not talked about providing assistance for small businesses, all right, who are still suffering from this pandemic that we are still in. We have the money. $3.1 billion state budget surplus, which is growing. It's not lessening, it's growing. $7.3 billion in American Rescue Plan funds here in Pennsylvania, available to us. We have never had, if you add those up,
over $10 billion. It is 1/3 of the entire state budget. Think about it. With no need for taxes. Crickets on the other side. Which means
You're fine.
if we don't speak up, we won't get the response necessary to deal with all of the issues that everyone laid out here. And every issue that was laid out here affects there's a housing crisis in every county in Pennsylvania. There's a crumbling school in every county in Pennsylvania. There are small businesses, barbershops and beauty salons and restaurants, neighborhood local businesses, Main Street businesses who are suffering still from the hell of this pandemic. And there's money there to help them. So thank you, Andrea. Thank you and the coalition that you pulled together to come up here today. There are no more excuses, people. No more excuses. The money is there. Spend the money to help the people. Spend the money to help the people. Spend the dollars that are there, over $10 billion. Say it over and over again. Over $10 billion there to help the people. Help them. They didn't cause this pandemic.
That's right.
They didn't cause this hell.
That's right.
But they're suffering mightily from it. The money is there. Help the people. Help the people. Bill DeWeese, I see you coming up the steps. We've had money before, but not this kind of money. We've had the resources. Help the people. Put the people first. Respond to their needs. The money is there. This is a moral crisis. This is not a budget crisis. This is not a financial crisis. This is a moral crisis. Who are you? What do you stand for? Dig inside yourselves. When you go back home to your children, to your grandchildren, and someone asks you, when you had the power, what did you do with it? What did you do with it? Did you help the people or did you ignore the people? Look around Harrisburg, any community that you come from. People are suffering, and we have the opportunity to help them. Help the people. Put the people first. Spend the money. No more excuses. No more excuses. No more excuses.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. It's a moral issue. This is not a budget issue. It's a moral issue. And we are better than this in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So just remember your character, who you are. The brother back there is sitting there saying, that's right, don't forget me. Help me. I need help. And so dig deep in terms of who you are. What is your moral conviction? What is it that you do? With that, I have the pleasure of having Dr. Sanul Corellis, who will talk to us about health and some other issues. I can't think of anything more important. Every time someone dies in this Commonwealth and in the United States of America, it breaks my heart. One death is too many. Dr. Corellis.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. And I heard it loud and clear from Senator Hughes. Help the people. That resonates with why I'm here today. I am a community-based cardiologist. I don't do this for a living. I treat patients. I listen to hearts. I hear heartbeats. And I'm here to report to you the state of the health of the people in the community that I take care of. In the midst of the COVID-19 pandemics, people are dying disproportionately in ways that we've never seen before. What's even more pronounced is the state of health of the people who are witnessing who are part of the pandemic and yet wondering what's going to happen tomorrow. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety that we've never seen before in the community. People are afraid. With that level of fear and anxiety comes a lot of pain. People are in pain. People are suffering. People are in discomfort in the community. They are in a state of dis-ease. They are not comfortable. So what are we to do? Are we going to help them or not? That is the question. We ought to help them. That's the basic instinct of our nature, our humanity. We ought to help the people. We ought to soothe their pain. We have to bring comfort where there's discomfort. That's what we do. That's what I try to do in the community with every patient that I see. And in the general stance, we have to take that into consideration, everything that we do. All the speakers behind me who came before me spoke to that. What are we going to do? I can tell you, if we don't bring the comfort where it's needed now more than ever before, without the professional, intervention that has been spoken before me, what we see is people are going to resort to high-risk behaviors. They're going to have to find ways to comfort themselves. You have to find ways to really find the ease, find the oomph. And so with that comes a lot of involvements in high-risk behaviors that will keep in perpetuation all the statistics that were noted earlier before by the speakers before me. That is not a way forward. We have to address the matter head on. I'm a preventive cardiologist. I'm all about prevention, intervention. Meet the problem where it is and bring solutions that will enable us to be able to see a better outcome. We cannot wait. We cannot let people take it in their own hands. We cannot let them do for their own selves, because we know it will only perpetuate the problems and cause more to our burdens in terms of economics. So, as it's been begged before, we have to find ways to help the people. I think for me, from where I am, I see we need to improve access. We have to give people access to ways where they can get to professionals who can help them, who not just professionals who are just there, but people in the community who are vested in primary care, who are vested, whose heart, whose purpose is in helping people. So being able to create avenues for public health, for primary care to be in the community. When I say primary care, that includes mental health as well. Mental health is primary care, mental health care. We have to create avenues for people to have mental health care, primary care, and that is the impetus, because when we have people in the community who are vested in the community, who have their heart in helping the people, who are empathic, who bring empathy, now we're able to bring trust. We're able to have a community where the people can come in and have their pain. They know that they will have their pain addressed, their anxiety, their what the discomfort treated in a way that will lead to a better outcome. And that's what it will take, and that's what we have to invest in. We have to be able to help the people by allowing them to have access to the professionals, to the people that they need. We need public health attention, we need public health, we need primary care, we need mental health care for the people. Not tomorrow, now. Now is the time. Thank you.
We have a few minutes left, so I would say to the legislators, if there's any of you who would like to make some brief comments, please go for it.
Good morning, everyone. My name is State Representative Manuel Manny Guzman. I represent the city of Reading, the 5th largest city in the Commonwealth. I also have the unfortunate honor of having a school district that is the most underfunded school district in the entire Commonwealth. And not just the Commonwealth, the entire, one of the most underfunded school districts in the entire country. 80% of my students are Latino. I have schools that are crumbling, lead in our water, and a fair funding formula that says that a whole generations of Manny Guzman has to wait 30 plus years before we get the funding that we so desperately deserve in the city of Reading. I call BS on that. Right now, we have an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to fund our schools equitably, to use some of the money, some of the surplus dollars that we have to make sure that no student falls underneath the cracks. Like many of my family fell through the cracks. You know, I'm one of 5 members, and 4 of my family members are high school dropouts because they fell through the cracks. And nobody gave a damn about them. This is our time and our opportunity to make things right. And I'm asking my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to make sure that students in my district are not falling through the cracks. With this equitable funding, the city of Reading can see over $97 million. That's not chump change, ladies and gentlemen. That's money for more schools. That's money for more teachers. That's money for infrastructure. That's money for getting lead out of our school districts. Things that we can do right now. And I'm telling you all today that I refuse to vote on a budget that does not put my students first, that does not equitably fund my schools first. The time is now. And I refuse to let another day pass before we have the funding that we need in the Reading School District so that no other Manny Guzmans have to fall through the cracks. Let's get it done, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
All legislators, let them do this.
We have a minute or two for maybe 2 other legislators, or is there anybody else who wants to make a comment? Anybody else? Are we good? Okay, great. That's a first. Legislators don't want the mic on. He just said it all. There's nothing else to say. Done. First of all, thank you to all of our speakers today for demanding better than the General Assembly. As it stands, our legislators in Harrisburg are willing to abandon our communities during a time when people are hurting the most. From workforce development to education and violence prevention to vaccine promotion, there is so much that our General Assembly must invest in so that our communities of color can not only recuperate from the pandemic, but are uplifted. You heard it here today. There is a long way to go in ensuring that our young people get the education they deserve and the job training they deserve. Again, I ask, if the state got paid, where is our aid? There is $7 billion and another $3 billion. That's a lot of money to do good work. There is also a long way to go in implementing concrete solutions to the gun violence epidemic and working to end health inequities. But it is not impossible, especially with a $7 billion investment from the federal government at our fingertips. We cannot let this opportunity pass us by without getting the aid we deserve. These $7 billion must be sent to our communities. If you believe these $7 billion are necessary to solving problems in our communities, call your state representative, your state senator now and demand it to be in the budget and fully allocated. Shame on us if we leave out of this pandemic with more inequities. Thank you for being here.
Oh, you're Senator Hughes, okay. So can we get a copy of that? Okay, I'll get it. Okay.
Donna, you have a moment?